Welcome back to Pop Goes the 60s, everyone. I'm Matt Williamson, and I just wanted to do a brief video. Marianne Faithful passed away recently at the age of 78, and it wasn't that surprised when I heard about it. Obviously, she had a long drug abuse problem, and making it to 78 is pretty good. And I was reminded that I had done a video series on her a couple years back, maybe even 3 years ago already. And I just wanted to tell you about it because her music is very much overlooked. Her place in rock music, in the 60s anyway, is pretty much being the girl wrapped in the rug in the Redlands bus with the Rolling Stones. And much little is said about her outside of that. Now that's a shame because she had some really wonderful music in the 60s. And in the United States, the 60s stuff isn't that much her. But let me just show you some of the album covers. I thought I'd bring these out to just remind you and remind myself of how much she put out in the 60s. For example, her first album, she actually released 2 albums simultaneously. And this was one of them, Marianne Faithful. And this is the other one. One was a folk record and one was a pop record. So I don't know how she managed to convince the record company to do 2 different albums, 2 different styles simultaneously, but she did. Now the American counterpart is this one. It's called Go Away From My World. So this is the US copy on the London label, whereas Decca was the label in England. So I'm just going to go through these real briefly here. These are American releases. This is the album with As Tears Go By. That was the first song that Jagger and Richards wrote together, and that was given to her until they recorded it. Faithful Forever, another US comp. Now this is the one, if you were to ask me which one to start with, I would start with North Country Made. And this is late 1966, I believe, and it did not get released in America. You can find it on CD. The album is a little tough to get, but this is where she really shines with her readings of British folk, traditional British folk. So a couple of the songs on here you'll notice: Scarborough Fair, Sally Free and Easy, She Moved Through the Fair. She covers a Butch Jansch song, Donovan. So some very interesting covers on here. Some originals by her guitar player, John Mark, who accompanies her on most of these albums. So very introspective music. I had somebody once ask me in my comment section regarding Marianne Faithful and the videos I did. He said, why would you bother doing a video on her? She doesn't have much of a voice. She's not a good singer. She's got a lousy vibrato. I said, well, you could say all the same things about Dylan. I listen to Marianne Faithful because of her interpretations, and I find that she puts a lot of feeling and extra meaning into the lyrics, and it just strikes a chord with me. So anyway, that was why I covered her and did a video on her. Now, you may say, well, 2 parts, that's kind of a lot, isn't it, Matt, for her 60s stuff? And the answer is yes. But because of her affiliation with the Rolling Stones, she became Mick Jagger's girlfriend. And you have to kind of reconcile how she fits into that story, because she is somewhat of a large part come 67, 68, 69 in the Stones' history. And this album was really the last album, the last proper album she did before she put in with Jagger. Because once she became his girlfriend, she pretty much put her career on hold and just supported him. This was another album that came out in 67, Love and a Mist. I think it's a bit of a comp. There might be a couple singles on here. And then this is Bogey. No, excuse me one second. Okay, why don't you sit over here? Sit. You sit here. His arch nemesis is across the street. He's just coming home. He lives next door. Now, you calm down. See if we can get through this. I'm going to have to reshoot this whole thing. Okay, where was I? Girl on a Motorcycle. Now, this was one of the films she acted in. She was doing quite a bit of acting by 68, 69, and she was actually very good. And the British title was called Naked Under Leather, which is a much better title. And this is the same soundtrack with a new cover, which kind of tells you more about the British title, even though it's still called Girl on a Motorcycle here. So anyway, interesting stuff. And then we've got a Greatest Hits album, always a good place to start. A variation on the Greatest Hits. This is the British version. No growling, please. And then finally, the album that didn't come out in early 71, Rich Kid Blues. And this has got a killer version of George Harrison's Beware of Darkness. And her voice is just starting to get bad here because as she abused drugs, her beautifully clear voice started to go back on her and betray her. I'm going to bring this up too. A lot of my research she has 3 autobiographies. This is my favorite one. This is with David Dalton, Faithful, an autobiography. And it's really an excellent autobiography. She's certainly not whitewashing anything, because things get very dark and she's very open about that. Let me just read you a little passage here real quick about her time with Jagger. However hard I thought living with Mick was, the first couple of years without him were harder. I had no idea how much I had been protected by Mick. Then again, if I hadn't left him, I would never have found out what strength I had in myself. So this book goes into the 70s and even later. Very tough life she chose for herself, and actually lived a long time, lived to be able to tell about it, actually. Okay, a little bit of some more business here I want to mention. I was asked to be on a podcast, the Gen X Muse, to discuss the Jefferson Airplane's Surrealistic Pillow. And Chris McGovern and I have been connected for quite a long time. I've been on the Gen X Muse podcast 1 or 2 times before, and this time we talk about Jefferson Airplane. So if you're into Surrealistic Pillow, we have a good hour-long discussion on it. And I also have 3 videos on Jefferson Airplane as well. I had to kind of go over those again before I did my podcast appearance. It's been a while since I've seen those, and I kind of enjoyed watching them. So I've got plenty of Jefferson Airplane on this channel to check too. And finally, I'd like to welcome several new Patreon supporters that have just signed up online. That link is below. And what Patreon is to support artists in a little extra way. And for being on my Patreon, to support me through Patreon, what I give you, I raffle off albums that never were, occasionally some merchandise, and I also offer uploads of unreleased songs or very hard to get songs. And the artwork for my albums that never were in CD form, that gets uploaded there as well. So those are some of the perks you get for the additional support. And let me just show you a couple of the albums I've done here, albums that never were. These are just jackets. Beatles' last album, Buffalo Springfield Stampede, Mamas and Papas, Crash On, Scream On, All Fall Down. I have several others. I hope to be getting to some more Beatle albums that never were this year. I've got a couple ideas that should be kind of fun. So anyway, that is the spiel. Please subscribe, that always helps. And check back often. If you want to see the merchandise, just go to popgoesthe60s.com. And I wish everybody loved me as much as you do, Bogey. I really do. And I'll be back with another video very soon here on Pop Goes the 60s.